Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you, new listeners, for tuning in, old listeners, for tuning in again to Radical Democracy. I'm Maddie Cheers, live here on Strong Island Radio on Facebook and in the TuneIn app. And again, we'd love to hear from you during the show, so you could join in our conversation. The phone number here is 516-945-9099. So today we're kind of continuing a discussion we started 2 weeks ago with Marianne Francesi about improving and updating our education system, bringing it into the 21st century and beyond. And I am very happy to say that my very special guest is one of my dearest friends, Linda Chambers. Linda and I met when we were theater majors at Towson State University. And she has continued in that she is a teacher. She teaches acting and directing and writing. She teaches on the high school level and on the university level. So one more time, if you'd like to call in for this discussion, it's 516-945-9099. So Lyndon, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And I'd actually like to start by reading a quote that I read 2 weeks ago on that first show with Marianne Francesi on radical education, because it really is a theme. It's a theme that I'm going to continue talking about throughout all these shows until people wake up and change the way we are educating our children and face the fact that we are in the 21st century. So the quote comes from Jack Ma. For those of you who've never heard of Jack Ma or didn't listen to the show, he is the wealthiest man in China. He started a tech company called Alibaba worth $420 billion. And actually he just left. He resigned. He is devoting all of his time to being a teacher again and to his educational foundation because of his belief that all over the world we have to change the way we are educating our children. So I'm going to start with this quote again from him. If we do not change the way we teach, 30 years from now, we will be in trouble. 30 years, that is not a long time. I just want to say that. 30 years from now, to be in trouble because we have not changed education today, that is not long. There are children born today that are going to be entering the workforce or have been looking for work since they were 21 years old, or out of college, or maybe even earlier, that if we don't change the way we are about to educate them, they will not be able to find jobs. So I'm going to finish. The things we teach, as Jack Ma says, the things we teach are from the past 200 years, and we cannot teach our kids to compete with machines that are smarter. We have to teach something unique so machines can never catch up with us. Values, believing, independent thinking, teamwork, care for others. These are the soft parts. Knowledge will not teach you that. That's why I think we should teach our kids sports, music, painting, arts. Everything we teach should be different from machines. If the machine can do it better, we don't have to think about it. So I am going to ask you, Linda, as you are the special guest today, how do you feel about that? What does that mean to you and the work you're doing?
Well, as a teacher, primarily in theater, I would like to follow that quote with another quote that completely agrees with this. And this was of Dr. Marvinluskey, who was Towson University president. She had been teaching just a few years when Maddie and I began our college career there. She came back to the university in 2012, and she was interviewed. This is a woman who began teaching, became a dean of fine arts. She became provost at one college, president of another college before she returned to Towson University. And in an interview, she said, crediting her 5 decades in theater with her success, she said, everything ties back to it. Conflict resolution, debate, time management, critical thinking, people skills. I mean, I even know how to use an electric saw. This is one of the reasons why I've always been so excited to be in working in theater and teaching theater. And I think maybe it's important to break down sort of what Marvin said in here, the different aspects of, if you say conflict resolution, debate, working together as a team, these things are reflected from the time a student starts working within a rehearsal process. Auditions for a show, begins rehearsal. Now, for people who are not well acquainted with theater, but maybe only go and see the shows, the process itself beforehand, it's kind of like an iceberg. The performance is what's above the water that you see. The rehearsal process is that 4 times, 5 times larger mass of ice that's below the water.
Exactly. Exactly. And in the process of going through rehearsal, you learn so many life lessons. You learn, well, first just from the audition on, you learn to take rejection if you don't get the show. You learn to work in a community. You learn to explore somebody else's thoughts and feelings. When you're doing, whether it's an original play you've never seen before, or if it's a classic, you're learning history. You're learning so much just by doing a performance. And we're not just going to talk about theater, although that is our focus tonight, but it opens a world to people like me. I mean, I was not the popular kid in school. You know, I've said this a million times before. I was very, very fortunate to grow up during the Vietnam era because things were so wide open, and because suddenly what was thought of as accepted wasn't accepted anymore. So it gave people who were on the fringe a chance to really shine, to do things that they had never thought of doing before. So the theater process for anybody, whether you're really going to grow up and be an actor or not, or a director or a writer, the theater process is extremely important to life, I think.
And I think one of the reasons why it's very important to think of something like theater being in a school, even if it's, you know, it's on a high school level, perhaps we're going to go with that for the moment and
Right.
say the idea that it may be a drama class that you can take, or it may not be. It may be a teacher who has the interest, or some students who have the interest should start it as an extracurricular activity, so that you're working after school with it, you know, working in a group. What Maddie just said about the audition process and learning about rejection really is a powerful lesson. I
Yes.
think very important.
Yep. You have to learn that sometimes life is not going to work out as you plan. Go to plan B. You know, and I think that one of the problems young people are facing today, and there's been a lot of conjecture about why do they not seem as strong-willed, as strong-minded, and I don't want to make generalizations, I don't want to stereotype young people, but they do seem to be having a harder time with rejection, with things not working out the way they planned. And I think a lot of that can be laid on the fact that the education system, at least in public education, has been focused on standardized testing, which we've talked a lot about, and about how that does nothing for your self-esteem. It breaks it down, as a matter of fact, and that we are sacrificing our children on the altar of greed for power, greed for money. We are doing away with the arts because we have to say that, oh, well, we're doing science and technology and engineering and mathematics, and maybe we'll throw some arts back in there. There are a few states throwing them back in there. But the whole, I think I said this in the last one, but it bears repeating. My dad, who was an aeronautical and astronautical engineer, we always kid around about how he is actually a rocket scientist. But he said to me a long time ago, he said to all of us kids, he said, the same process that he goes through to create an airplane is the same process that your mother goes through to create a painting. So it is that creative process that we have to instill in our children. And we can't do it if we're constantly telling them they have to be perfect. because there's a difference between telling a child you have to be perfect, you have to get the A on this test, your school's depending on you, your dad and mom are depending on, everybody's depending on you. I actually heard that announced once in a school when they were preparing for the ELAs, and one of the somebody got on on the announcements and said, okay, fourth graders, you got those ELAs coming up, don't let your school down. Really?
That's shocking.
It is.
Appalling.
Appalling.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
the thing about doing art is you're not striving for perfection. You're striving for excellence. Whatever it is you're making, whatever it is you're creating, it's not about making it perfect. You know it's not going to be perfect the first time you try it. And the nice thing about theater that is different from some of the other arts, other than maybe playing in a symphony or music, things like that, is that you also have this community. It's not quite as scary because you have this community, this interdependence.
I think one of, following up on that is that it truly is a community. And for a period of time, for the, if we're talking about high school, there are usually 2 productions a year, usually a straight show, that's a drama without music, that comes in the fall, and the big moneymaker is the musical, and that is in the spring. For the period of time that these students begin working on a production, you find that gradually, as you're moving through the rehearsal process, and I directed extensively at a magnet school, high school magnet school, also at the university, but watching from the students who have acted before, they've all acted before, but coming together in the beginning of the rehearsal process with a read-through, and then gradually, step by step, focus by focus, day by day, what you're seeing is they become a unit. They become an ensemble. They know this is who you have to depend on, the person across from you, the person in the booth, the person changing the costumes for you. This isn't just about actors. This is about the crew as well. Let me just repeat one thing about what Dr. Luskey said, because we tend to miss this, is she finished with, I even know how to use an electric saw.
Exactly. I was just thinking that when I was thinking about how there are 6 million skilled labor jobs open in the United States. And skilled labor is very different from robot labor, from the things that will ultimately be taken over by a robot. So for those things, all kinds of arts can train you for that. Hand-eye coordination, if you're going to make clay pots, if you're going to build something, if you're going to get into sculpting, if you're going to get into painting, any of it, and all of it informs who you are. Do we have a question? Oh, a caller.
Hello.
Hello?
Hi.
Hello, caller. Who are you?
Celia Kibler.
Celia Kibler. Hi.
Hi, Celia.
Hi, Linda. Hi, Maddie.
Hi. This is my sister, Celia, joining us right now. And the only reason we don't sound exactly alike is because she has a little laryngitis.
Laryngitis, yes.
Yeah.
So did you want to make a comment, Celia, on education since you are in that field yourself?
Yes. So I have 2 comments to make, and that is that the beauty of like a theater program too is that, hold on, why is it still talking behind me? Is that it gives children, it gives kids, it gives teens, it gives university students, people that feel like they don't quite fit,
Yes.
but
Yes.
yet they have certain talents. It gives them a place to belong to. And for teenagers, that is a huge thing. And we want them more often joining a theater program than a game.
Yes.
I cannot
And,
agree more, Celia.
What?
I cannot agree more is what I said.
Yes.
Yeah, it does. And, it's such a family. I know when you guys were in theater, it is such a family that it really gives kids that may not belong anywhere else a strong, feeling of belonging. And then the other thing I just wanted to comment on in the stress of education is that kids are now under more stress than they've ever been under in the history of being a kid.
Yep.
And there's all kinds of illness stemming from it. And a huge part of that is the stress and the demands that are put on them through the education process from parents and administrators and teachers.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we're talking about. It's one thing to demand excellence. It's one thing to say, do your best. And if a child does their best, whether it's in the arts or it's in math or it's in science, whatever they're in, there's a sense of accomplishment just that you tried your hardest. This may not end up being the field that you go into, but the fact that you have put your best effort into it should be recognized. That switch to, it's not about your best effort, it's about achieving perfection. No one achieves perfection. There is no such thing as perfection. So perfection is something that we imagine we should have, and what we need to do is reimagine allowing our children to work at their best level at many different things so that they can discover who they are, and we can discover that along with them. And then we can honor them. And like you brought up, Celia, there have been many successful programs in inner cities with music, with the arts, in areas where there are gangs, in areas where there are hard to teach children. And we see that ourselves. I mean, we see that in the program that we do in schools. Very often, we do a small clay project with them. It's a very hands-on American Indian program. So we do a small clay pot project with them. And very often, the kids who do not speak up very much, don't raise their hands a lot, or the kids who have special needs are the ones who do the most beautiful, amazing pots, who have the most patience, who we sit there and the teachers and I will say, okay, you need to do this as a hobby. The school we just did before Thanksgiving, that we were so impressed with the work that the kids did and the patience that they exhibited. And that's another, speaking of things you need in order to survive life, self-discipline, self-control, patience, that's all in the arts. And we were...
And plus, sorry.
No, go ahead.
And plus, the only other thing is, you brought up doing your best. If you teach your children to do their best, that will carry them through life.
Yes.
If you praise the effort and the hard work and not the results, that will give them the work ethic they need to take them through life.
Yeah.
And the problem with schools is they don't care about your best. They care that you memorize everything, ace this test, and move on and learn nothing.
Right, and that's exactly Jack Ma's point.
Without creativity.
Right. And when Albert Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge because knowledge is limited. And that's exactly what Jack Ma is saying. We can't just teach them a bunch of stuff that is not going to prepare them for a robotic world where most of the jobs they thought they might have are going to be gone. We have to teach them so that they will have jobs. They'll create their own jobs. They'll create their own businesses. We have to open that possibility to them, and we can't open it if we are constantly telling them that they need to be perfect. And I work with a lot of wonderful teachers, and they are as frustrated by this, especially the ones that have been in it a long time. They are as frustrated by this attitude as any of us are. And what I was going to say about the kids who did the pottery project is that they all wanted to know where to buy the clay, how do we do this? And one of the teachers and I, we put up on the board, this is what you're looking for. You're going to look for a self-hardening, self-drying clay. And then one of the kids said, and I'm going to ask for that for Christmas. Yay!
Wow.
Yeah. Yay. Instead of, and then we turned around and said, yes, instead of another video game, ask for self-hardening clay.
All right. Well, it was good calling in. I'll let you guys continue.
Oh, thank you, Seal.
Well, Celia, I have a quote especially for you.
Okay.
This is, let's make sure that I have this quote here. This is a quote from the TV series Penny Dreadful, no longer on, but this is something that I truly loved. There is a place where the malformed find grace, where the hideous can be beautiful, where strangeness is not shunned but celebrated. This place is the theater.
I love it.
Isn't that great? Now, granted,
That is great. And
they
I
were
think so.
they were saying it to Frankenstein's monster,
But still,
which just goes
But
to
it still
show you.
applies.
I think also another thing that Celia, that you were talking about is the whole idea of the outsider. And
Yes.
a little anecdote that I have is going to see a high school production in a school in a district, a very poor district. Not much, not much that they had in the way of, their sets or the story or what they were doing. And at one point while I was watching it, one of the young actors up there was behaving kind of goofy. Didn't look as though, was kind of laughing, was kind of moving a little bit erratically. And I was wondering, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, oh, here's somebody that is, not taking it seriously, not taking what they're doing seriously. When he finished his bit on stage, everybody all the other students just stopped, applauded, gave him hugs, things like that. People in the audience, obviously his family and others, the parents, they're all applauding him and cheering him. And I'm realizing, silly me, what I'm realizing is here is someone that didn't fit in, but they let him fit in.
yes.
Somebody who wasn't an actor, who has, their moment. Bring everyone in, make everyone part of
And
the
they
family.
cheer them on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that goes back to Marvine's quote, is the wonderful thing about theater is that there are a lot of different jobs. There are a lot of different
Yes.
skills you can learn.
Yes.
Right.
One of the great things about the way we were educated in theater in the university was that you had to be on crews. Part of
Yes.
getting your degree was to be on crews. So people discovered, the one guy who became like the big famous makeup artist, whose name may or may not come to me.
Yes.
But he's in Hollywood. He's been working out there for his whole adult life, because you have so many things that you are required to participate in. And most of the people we graduated with probably are not in theater related careers. I am because I do storytelling, but everything I do in my career, even running for office, every single thing that I am doing relates back to that education in theater, that freedom to create. And certainly going way back to high school, because in high school I was very much involved in the theater department in high school, the theater productions in high school. My remaining friend from high school was the lighting designer and the person that took the pictures. And it gave you the place to be and create who you really wanted to be. It put you into that creative process, so that if I'm doing a story or I'm designing a program, I mean, often I just basically have to sit around and design a program for a school. So, but all of that is creativity. All of that comes from that very human part of us that as often in spirituality, where people say it's the creator within you that connects you to the creator around, above, however you conceive of it. But if there's anything divine about us, it is that ability to create. And on the other hand, there have also been people that have pointed out that if we don't create, if we are not allowed to create something beautiful, we will create something not so beautiful. We will create destruction.
And I would,
Correct.
I'm going to add to
All right, I'm hanging up on you guys.
Oh, okay. Bye, Seal. Thanks
rest
for
your
calling.
voice, Celia.
Bye.
Another educator that we both know, whom I might add, again, we went to college with, is Nancy Pawlikowski Sherman,
Yes.
who began the Magnet Theater program at Patapsco High School in Baltimore, and she had a tremendous group of students that she worked with, and one of the things that she said to them is, you may not leave here and go into theater. Some of you will, But what you will take with you is, it may just be your hobby. You may have another job and you may do community theater at night. That's what you may do. She said, but all of these skills that you're carrying with you, they don't end. Those skills, being able to deal with people, to have empathy with people,
Yes.
to speak in front of people. There are some programs for little kids that I'm familiar with. Now, I'm not teaching in those programs, but I have had occasion to work with these students. And you have little kids in these programs. You might start at 5 years old, go up to, in some programs, go up to 18. So they graduate out of there. But these kids, they know by the time they are 6 or 7 years old, you arrive on time for things.
Yes.
You sit quietly when other people are talking. You are mindful of your fellow actors, the people on the stage with you. You're a helper. You may be working
Beautiful.
backstage. You may be, and I have been the beneficiary in a number of cases of working with students who have been in these programs as kids, and they are there on time, and they are serious, and they, it instills so much in you, a pride in who you are.
Exactly. And it gives you the tools to grow up. It gives you the tools to mature. It gives you the tools to become an important member of your community.
Yes.
Of the whatever that community is. It gives you caring. It gives you, one more time, a work ethic and self-control and self-discipline. And we, as the adults in charge of those children, we have to do what Celia was saying, what you said earlier. We have to make sure we are honoring the effort. It's the effort. And then we, as adults, in my personal opinion, we as adults have to demand that we change education. We have to cut this out.
Yes.
We have to stop. This is old stuff. What do we think? Or are we still in that like peasant mentality where we're having kids as a commodity? We're having kids so that they can work on a farm. We're having kids so that they can go into some
They'll be in the
industrial.
factory.
They'll be in the factory, or they'll be they'll take over my job. They'll take over my business. There's no farm to work on. In 30 years, probably less, there will be no production line to work on. There will be no factory to work in. That will all be robots. The store that your grandparents started, much as I hate to say this because I do love the little store, but let's face it, hello, Amazon, et cetera, there isn't that store to take over anymore. So we have to give them the ability to create for themselves. We have to give them the ability to be geniuses. We're all, it's like I said, like Albert Einstein said, I'm going to say this quote again. I love this quote. This is one of my all-time favorites. We are all geniuses. But if you tell a fish he has to climb a tree, he will think he's stupid forever.
Yes.
So that's where the arts come in. And then there's just the sheer fun of doing it. There's just fun. You remember stuff that's fun. There's vocabulary. You can tie every single thing, whether it's English language skills, Spanish language skills. How many kids would learn Spanish? I mean, we should be teaching 2 languages or 3 or 4, much younger than we are. But how much fun would it be? You're making something. You learn the English word for clay. Now you've got the Spanish word for clay. Now you've got the French word for clay. Now you've got the German word for whatever it is, but you're teaching them at the time that they are ready to learn language. You're not demanding of them, which is the biggest mistake in the National Core Curriculum, is the change in kindergarten. One of the biggest problems we're facing now is the fact that our children have not been socialized. We've replaced, learn reading and math, learn reading and math, learn reading and math. Meantime, there are buku studies. Gardner did it years ago, where you can actually get your children to just do social skills, creative skills until age 8. And kids that start learning to read at age 8, by age 9 are reading as well as the kids who started at age 5. So what do we want?
Amazing.
What do we want for our children? That is the question. Do we want them to be happy? Do we want them to be fulfilled? And those of you out there who don't have children that are always going, oh, well, I don't have children, so why do I have to pay taxes for that? You're living in the community where these children are growing up. You want happy children. You want the people around you to be happy. Happy people do not bug each other. They do not bother each other.
And they are your future.
Exactly. They are the people that will be your leaders.
Yes.
You know, so this nonsense, well, you know how I feel. I've said this a million times. I probably said it on the last show, and I will say it a million more times. We need to separate education from property tax. Education should not be funded by property tax. Education should be funded in the general fund. And don't tell me there aren't examples of how schools could be. There are examples all over the world. There are examples in your neighborhood. Why is it that in New York we have to have a lottery to see which kids go to charter schools? Why aren't all the New York schools charter schools? If that's where everybody wants to go, if that's the kind of school they want to be in, we're breaking hearts right and left when these kids don't get picked. I don't know if you ever, I wish I knew the name of the documentary on it. It is heartbreaking. And I'm sitting there watching this documentary thinking, well, the obvious answer is make them all like the charter schools.
Sure.
Why aren't we? Real estate? Lobbying, testing lobbying, textbook lobbying, money, greed, not putting our communities first. Because children, for those of you that don't have kids, children are part of your community. And like Linda said earlier, they are going to be your leaders one day. They are going to be out there.
They are going to be on your lawn.
Yes.
Like it or not, curmudgeon. And I would say, too, with theater, one of the things that just struck me as Maddie was talking about this is when I'm directing, and we're directing older scripts, and many of them are, you know, scripts from the 30s or the 40s or the 50s, scripts from way in the past, you know, Shakespeare scripts, the Greeks.
Right.
One of the things is the students, and I'm sure this is true of most directors when they're working with students, if you're a teacher in any capacity and you're directing a production at a school of any kind, there's an academic aspect to it. I mean, the kids research, so then if they're doing, say, arsenic and old lace,
Right.
and there's a reference to a newspaper or a theater critic, in fact, there is in arsenic and old lace, all of these references, those students do research. I mean, they do research. What does this mean? So they're learning about the past, too. It's not like they're forgetting you.
Yes, exactly. And the past informs the future.
Exactly.
The past informs the present. It informs the future. There's no getting away from this. You know, that is what happens. And if we do not educate our children so that they are the best that they can be, if we do not look back to the way tribal people used to do it, where the grandparents were doing the education, and part of the job of the grandparents wasn't just to teach the skill, wasn't just to hand the knowledge, it was to watch the child, to see what are they interested in, what are they good at, what can they be, how can they contribute? No matter who they are, no matter what they are, they would contribute. And there would be reinforcement for this idea that you could contribute. And everybody would be involved in something artistic. I have a friend, John Stokes, and we mentioned him last week, but John is the head of the tracking project, and he's learned tracking first from the Aborigines in Australia. And of course, their music, everything about them has to do with their connection with nature, the universe. They're fascinating. And they have so much to teach us. And when John talks about tracking, he says it's tracking and the arts of life. It's not just figuring out which footprints of which animal are leading you to which place. Tracking is about the arts of life. And the first thing he tells you to do is learn to track yourself. Learn to get into your own head, your own body, track yourself. And theater can do that for you. Art can do that for you. When you're creating, what are you doing but discovering yourself? What are you doing but acknowledging that you are also a creator? That's what the arts is all about.
I would I completely and totally agree. Of course, I do. We were raised in the same theater at university. There is there's something else to mention here, and that is the idea through the process of a play, of rehearsing a play. Is you start out with one thing. You start out with a story. And I've told students before, I teach script writing, as well. And to these students, I say, very few people take an evening, sit down with a script, have a glass of wine by the fire and read it. Plays, screenplays, anything like that, they truly don't exist until they've been given life, until they are up on a stage. Now, certainly we can read, we read plays for pleasure, but in this case, one of the things the students do is they start out with these words, with this play, and they have tasks that they have to do. They have to memorize their lines. They have to come to rehearsal. They have to know their blocking. They have to learn they have to work together. But one of the things that always amazes people is the repetition. When you say, I am working with this same script, this is the script, these are the words, and we will be doing this night after night after night after night. And each time you rehearse a scene, each time you move forward in the script, and there is improvement. That is, the students begin to own the roles. They begin this idea of repetition, that it's no, you don't try it once and then that's good. You don't try it once, you do it over and over and over again. I say 8 weeks rehearsal, and that's about what you're going to have. And because I love quotes, I do have one quote here. This is Bill Murray, Groundhog Day, and actually this was Bill Murray after he had seen the Broadway production of Groundhog Day. And this is so important, however you take it. The idea that we have to try again. We have to try again.
Yes.
It's such a beautiful, powerful idea.
That's exactly it. And that's exactly why we can talk about, in the middle of all this chaos, in the middle of this idea that we may never unify, in the middle of all of this, we can imagine ourselves unifying. We can try again. We may have to change the way we are doing things, but we can imagine different ways to do it. And,
yes.
And if, I was really struck in our conversation when over the weekend we're working with Marianne Francesi on her play, The Surrogate Church, which she'll be back on again to talk more about that and the process of creating and what it means to take. And that is it's a play that is dealing with a very volatile situation. It's dealing with the Catholic Church and all the abuses of children that have come out over the many years. Very volatile, very political, which is one of the reasons why you create it in a play or in a book is because if you have the talent to do that, if you then people can listen and look at it from all sides. If you've got politicians and priests and everybody just yelling at each other and taking sides,
yes.
There's no way to come to the understanding. What the arts can give us is an understanding of who we are as human beings. And I thought one of the most frightening things that Marianne brought up this weekend was in listening to Yuval Noah Harari, who is, we mentioned him in another show. He's the author of the book Sapiens. He's a futurist. He's brilliant. Is what he talks about that is somewhat frightening is that are we really ready to turn everything into an algorithm? We have an algorithm for dating. People don't go someplace and they do meet, but are we willing to turn over our humanity to a set of algorithms where you're going to choose your life's job based on filling out a form that gets filed into a computer, and the computer spits out what it thinks you should be doing? And that, of course, brings me to Pablo Picasso's quote. We're like the quote queens tonight here with Pablo Picasso, which when he said, computers are useless, they only give you answers. So I don't think computers are useless. I'm not really
Right.
even saying that, but I do think it's important to take the essence of that idea. They can only give you answers. It goes back to Jack Ma. It goes back to Mr. Harari. It goes back to what they are saying is that we have to focus on the things that make us human. We are going to give up our humanity if we think all of who we should be is going to come from a computer program. And that to me is unfathomable. One of the scariest statistics I heard over the last month was that 64% of teenagers prefer to text to communicate with their friends than sit down with them face to face. But this is with friends. This is not like I'm texting you to say, Linda, I'll be there at 5.
Right.
This is how they want to communicate.
Right. And even if they're sitting, in the same room with each other.
Yes. Yes.
And we're not kidding about that. That is, and I think one of the things to keep in mind, continually keep in mind about, it's not too late.
Right.
We are seeing these liberal art. Well, we've seen the arts being cut from schools, from public schools. We've
yes.
been seeing that for a long time.
Yep.
We're seeing now the programs that are being cut from universities as well, because they're not. The classes are still there, but the majors are not there. But one of the things I think that's very important is I'm talking about teaching students who have had no relationship with the arts, all throughout their public school, whatever they're doing. But by the time they get to the university, I taught non-majors, and one of the things that I discovered was, actually the way I phrased it was that I came into teaching non-majors who were in there for their credit, their fine arts credit. That's really all. They don't want to stand up and do things. they don't want to that. But I took as my credo the same thing as a physician. I said, I am there first to do no harm.
Thank God you said that.
Thank God. Not to come in, steamroll students, make them hate and fear the theater. But the whole idea that, you get in there, teach, keep those programs in there. They give a sense of, I believe, empathy.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's exactly it. It's a sense of empathy. That's the basic thing that makes us the most human. Empathy, love, compassion,
Yes.
understanding. That's all. That is all emphasized in the arts, whether you're going to write, whether you're going to paint. These things that arise in us to create arise because of our connection with each other.
Yes.
It's like when the Cherokee say that we are a conglomeration of our stories. They don't believe we have an actual self. That we have, we do in our culture. There's billion-dollar industries all based on self-help, but there is no one self. We are who we are in relationship to other people, and those relationships are stories. They are the stories of our lives, and how we relate to people is who we are. So that if we don't have the ability to communicate, where did that fall apart? Where did that fall apart? Did it fall apart because maybe we're overemphasizing that perfection thing, the testing thing, that's not going to teach you how to communicate with people. That's not going to get you the job that you want. I mean, even if the algorithm spits out, here's the job you should have, and sadly, you're thinking you don't have enough self-confidence to believe in yourself enough to say, no, I don't want to have that job. I want to have that other job,
Right.
So let's say you go up for that job. If you're not the one in that office with that passion during that interview for that job, you're not getting it. I don't care what the algorithm says.
Exactly.
You're just not going to get it.
Exactly.
So we do have to instill in our kids that they can follow their passion. We have to let them make the mistakes. You and I both know from being on stage, man, there is nothing more horrifying or embarrassing than making that mistake on stage. But then you know what you learn? You live through it.
Exactly.
You got through it. You messed up big time in front of a whole bunch of people, and yet you're still alive. You're
and
still
nine
here.
times out of 10, 10, you screw up on stage and you forget a line, and that person across from you who has been rehearsing with you week after week after week is there for you.
That's right.
Brings in the line, brings
That's
in what
right.
they need to do. The another thing that I just wanted to mention in, bringing in, we've been talking a lot about the students themselves and all the things that this gives them. But I also wanted to say that working in the theater and I'm going to talk about high school primarily here,
Yes.
is bringing in the families, bringing
Yes,
in
yes,
the communities.
community. Oh, please speak to that.
There is working with my friend Nancy, who I mentioned before, but coming in and directing, this is back in the early 2000s, directing at her high school. You would get used to, if you had a long rehearsal over the weekend, parents bringing in pizza. Mm-hmm. You would get used to the parents working with, if there was a teacher who was the tech person, building the sets, working on the costumes. Parents would came, drop their kids off, pick their kids up. I mentioned before sitting in a theater and seeing the kid who was on stage who didn't seem like he quite belonged there, but in fact belonged there more than anybody else, was looking out and seeing families, no matter what the budget is, no matter if it's on the lower scale, no matter if it's on the higher scale, no matter if they have a very strong theater program, as a lot of these high schools do, or whether it's just that teacher that's working hard. I swear to you, the parents see that and see their child being, my child is doing something he or she feels special about. They become part of that community. They're making the cupcakes and the cookies, and they're selling the concessions, and they're drumming up business there. It is something that I think, as much as sports,
Yes.
draw people in. Stop thinking about the theater as something alien that doesn't. It does, and maybe in even a more personal way. Because they can sit with them, with their kids. They can be there and support them. It's one of the most rewarding things that I have done and that I do, is working with these kids, and also the parents so proud of maybe totally astonished that this is what is in their family. My heavens. But I think that's, community, family, the student themselves. We all should be supporting the arts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This nonsense that we're spending millions and millions, billions, actually, if you look at the country, billions of dollars on tests, on these standardized tests that benefit no one but the people selling real estate and the people developing real estate, that we are spending billions of dollars on this to make our children feel like they need to have standardized minds, that everybody should be the same, that we should be ashamed of ourselves. And we should start to recognize that this is an ongoing problem, that we, the people, are going to have to say enough is enough. We are going to have to say we're ashamed. We are going to have to look at other countries where they do take the top, was it Denmark? The top 10% of their graduating classes are encouraged to become teachers.
Yes.
Where they do pay them well, where they ask their own teachers to develop programming. How would you develop a curriculum? Who do we ask for National Core? Who do we ask? Business people. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. I can't even say that enough, ridiculous. And now we're looking to another billionaire businessman who's telling the whole world how we need to be re-educating our children in the whole world. And are we listening? Or are we going to just stand here, stomp our feet, and go, well, I'm, how could he know better than me? He's Chinese.
Exactly.
We're Americans. And I don't mean to make fun of the patriotism, but there is a certain ego in government, on both sides of the aisle. I'm going to be really fair about this one, because how I feel. I feel we shouldn't even have lawyers in Congress because lawyers are trained to win. That's their thing.
Right.
They're trained to win. They're not trained to be just. They're trained to win. And as long as we have people in Congress who are making laws, who are trained to win, they are not going to do what's best for us because their egos will not allow them to do that. We have to be able to look at other people. And the really weird thing is we've got them in our own country. We have brilliant children, brilliant teachers. We have brilliant people starting brilliant charter schools, doing experimental things like Marianne's doing with education. We have, I don't even know how many private schools going all the way from a conservative view of education to the most liberal, we're just going to put our kids in a room with a bunch of stuff and see what they want to do with it. We have all kinds of examples in this country, not to mention in the world, of how we could be changing public education. And we, the people, are just going to have to demand that it changes.
Yes.
If we care about our children that are going to be in the workforce 30 years from now, we have to demand that it changes. And we have to look to the arts. The arts give us all the answers.
And if you're still there, as a parent, a little worried about the one that wants to go, become a theater major of some sort, let me just, it's the third time I've said it, Marvine's words, I even know how to use an electric saw.
That's right. Maybe the kid will be a carpenter.
Exactly.
There's a lot of demand for beautiful carpentry, and there will continue to be. There will continue to be a demand for beauty as long as that's the way we are educating people. Hands down, the most chilling quote I have ever read in my life about education comes from Joseph Stalin. Education is a weapon whose effect depends on who holds it in his hands and at whom it is aimed. So when I look at our reluctance and our inability to let go of our addiction to testing, that makes me, I don't want to come off like a conspiracy theorist, but I gotta say, I do wonder sometimes. We know more about the human brain, about human development, about the way people learn. We have more examples of exciting, wonderful, amazing ways to educate our children, and we're not.
Exactly.
And if you sadly cannot afford to send your kid to a private school, if you heartbreakingly lose that charter school lottery, if you sadly cannot afford to stay home with your kids and homeschool them, which we all know, homeschooling is like astronomically exploding in every area of society. It started out in the very conservative. It's everywhere now because we're smart people. We're smart. We have people are smart.
And
What
let's,
I'm
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, support these magnet programs as well.
Yes.
It's not like the student goes and plays games all day. They're
Right.
getting that education you want them to get. At the same time, you're actually something that's very heartbreaking, a number of years ago, are parents wanting their students, their kids, to go into magnet schools to protect them from going into a public school.
Oh my God.
This is seriously, who have conversations with the teachers, adjudicators there and say, I'm afraid they're going to kill my son, my daughter, if they're, this is so important. My final word on it, I'm going back to the electric saw, Maddie. I'm sorry.
Well, I think that there is great hope. There is always great hope because we can change.
Yes.
It's just that we have to be committed to that change. Another thing theater and art teaches you commitment,
Yes.
follow through,
Yes.
patience, you have to be aware it is not going to happen overnight. One of the most brilliant things about the Great Law of Peace, about the Haudenosaunee, about all Native people, and it's indigenous cultures all over the world. What we do today, we also do for the next 7 generations, not just for ourselves. And when you read that NASA study that Marianne brought up, that was done in this country, where they tested kids to see if they were creative geniuses. In kindergarten, 98% of them came up as creative geniuses. By 5th grade, it was only 30%. By 10th grade, 12%. What more do we need to know than that? What more do we as adults need to know than that? And why aren't we talking to these brilliant older teachers? Why aren't they the ones that we're looking to? Why aren't we sitting with the parents? Why aren't we sitting with the kids?
Yes.
Why aren't we sitting as a community and saying, hey, how can we reimagine this?
Yes.
How can we reimagine our education, our government, everything, so that everybody's happy? So I know it's time to go. I want to thank my wonderful producer, Bobby Lacera, and I also, Bobby, want to acknowledge something you reminded me of last week real quickly when we got into the discussion about the Judeo-Christian idea of consumerism, that there's this idea of markets and money and all this stuff. And I want to acknowledge what Bobby brought out, which is that there is also that teaching in Christianity. Yes, we may have been given dominion over the earth, but we have also been told that we are supposed to replenish it and we are supposed to take care of it for the coming generations. So again, as always, with politics and religion, the people at the top are going to manipulate it to say the words that they want said so that you don't have to be creative about it. So, and that's where the arts really comes in. That's where we really can question authority. And that's what the arts have always done. Question authority.
Yes.
Has to be done. Thank you, Linda. Thank you so much. Thank you, Bobby, so much. And I thank you all for listening. So see you soon, or hear you soon. Bye. Have a wonderful week.